The sun fell behind the jagged cliffs, casting the valley in a blood-red glow. She ran, boots pounding the dust, heart hammering as the gang's bullets tore through the air behind her. A scream caught in her throat when she saw the barn ablaze, her only shelter, her home, swallowed by flames. Smoke stung her eyes, the acrid smell of charred wood clinging to her lungs. And then she saw him, standing in the shadows at the canyon's edge, eyes hard but unyielding. A flicker of hope and a question she couldn't yet answer survived the chaos. The morning after the fire, the town looked smaller, diminished under the weight of smoke and despair. Dust clung to everything, the crooked wooden storefronts, the wagons parked haphazardly along the main street, even the faces of the few townsfolk who had dared to emerge. She walked among them, shoulders squared but trembling beneath the surface. Her name was Clara Hayes, and the fire had taken more than just her barn. It had consumed her certainty, her safety, and the fragile peace she had built since her father died. Her boots scuffed the dirt as she approached the saloon. The sign creaked in the wind, swinging lazily as if mocking her. Inside, men turned their heads, some with curiosity, some with contempt. Clara didn't care. She only needed information: who had done this, and why. Her eyes, dark and unflinching, scanned the room until they landed on a familiar figure at the corner table. He was a stranger to most, but not to her. Jackson Cole, a man with a reputation that carried both fear and admiration. His jaw was set, fingers drumming against the table, but his eyes softened when they met hers. "Clara," he said, voice low, almost gentle, "you shouldn't be out here alone." "I have no choice," she replied, jaw tight. "I need to find out who did this before they strike again." Her words were steel, but her hands shook slightly as she gripped the brim of her hat. Fear was a constant companion now, creeping into her every decision. Jackson studied her silently, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "You're asking for trouble," he warned. But Clara had stopped listening to warnings a long time ago. Each day brought a new challenge: thieves, outlaws, the harshness of the land itself. She had learned quickly that survival required more than courage. It demanded relentless action. Outside, the wind picked up, sending a swirl of dust across the street. A distant howl echoed from the hills, sharp and menacing. Clara flinched. She knew the dangers of this land weren't just human, they were the wild, unpredictable forces that could crush her at any moment. But deep down, under the exhaustion and grief, a spark burned. She would not be broken, not by fire, not by fear, not by this unforgiving West. And yet, as she turned back toward the smoldering remains of her barn, she realized something unsettling. Someone had watched her last night, someone who didn't want her to survive. Her jaw clenched. The fight had only just begun. Clara returned to the barn's remains, the charred skeleton of timber jutting into the sky like blackened bones. She knelt among the ashes, sifting through what little was left. Each scorched plank, each melted piece of metal, reminded her of what had been stolen: safety, memories, and the faint hope of a quiet life. The air was thick with smoke, and every breath felt like swallowing fire. But she forced herself to inhale anyway. A sudden crunch of footsteps behind her made her spin. Jackson stepped into view, eyes shadowed by concern. "You shouldn't be here alone," he repeated, his voice firmer this time. Clara's hand hovered near the revolver at her hip, but she didn't draw it. "Not yet. I have to know," she said. Her voice was quiet but edged with steel. "If I don't understand why this happened, I can't stop it from happening again." Her gaze swept the ground, scanning for any clue the fire hadn't erased. A twisted nail, a smoldering piece of cloth, small remnants that might whisper the truth. Jackson crouched beside her, studying the debris with her. "It wasn't random," he murmured. "Someone wanted to send a message. And they'll come again if they think they can break you." Clara swallowed hard. The words echoed in her mind. She had always believed she could handle the hardships of the West's lonely nights, bitter winters, unyielding land. But this was something different. This was intentional, targeted. Fear gnawed at the edges of her resolve, but she forced it down. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. A distant rider's shout cut through the morning air, sharp and urgent. Clara stiffened. Jackson's hand touched hers briefly, a warning, a grounding presence. "That could be them," he said. "Or someone watching. Either way, you need to move." Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed to flee, to hide, to surrender, but surrender had never been an option for Clara. Not when the stakes were this high. Not when someone's cruelty had already taken so much from her. She rose, brushing ash from her sleeves, eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, the threat waited, silent but deadly. And in that moment, Clara realized the truth she could no longer deny. Survival alone wasn't enough. To protect herself, to claim her life back, she would have to fight, and to fight, She might have to risk everything, even her heart. Her jaw set, determination flashing in her eyes. The West had tried to break her, but she was far from finished. And as the wind carried a new, ominous howl from the hills, she knew one thing for certain: her life was no longer hers alone to lose. The town's streets were quieter than usual, the kind of silence that pressed heavy on the chest and made every shadow seem alive. Clara rode through on horseback, Jackson following at a cautious distance. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the horizon, searching for signs of movement, any flicker of danger. She had learned the hard way that the West was never forgiving, and now she understood that the threat she faced was no accident. The wind carried the faint smell of smoke and the tang of fear. Clara's mind raced, replaying the events of the night of the fire. Who had targeted her? Why now? Every answer seemed to lead to another question, each more dangerous than the last. She clenched the reins, knuckles white, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was no longer just about surviving. It was about protecting something she had only recently dared to hope for: her freedom, her home, her life. Jackson rode closer, his face tense. "There's something you're not telling me," he said quietly. "Someone in town is feeding information to the people who did this. I can feel it." Clara's stomach tightened. The thought of betrayal so close to her, so intimate, was a knife twisting in her gut. She had trusted this town, its people, its quiet rhythms, but now everything felt like a lie. Her mind flashed to the sheriff, the baker, even the blacksmith. Any of them could be watching, waiting. "I know," she admitted, voice low, "but I can't let them see me afraid. Not now." A sudden shout shattered the tension, a young boy running down the street, eyes wide with terror. "Bandits! They're coming from the North Ridge." Clara's pulse spiked. Her horse reared, and she gripped the reins tightly, forcing it back down. Dust swirled as townsfolk scrambled for cover, doors slamming, windows shuttering. Jackson dismounted beside her, drawing his revolver. "We have to move, now," he said, urgency lacing his tone. She nodded, heart hammering, fear coiling tightly around her ribs. The bandits weren't random marauders, they were organized, coordinated. Someone had orchestrated this attack, and Clara knew, deep down, that this confrontation was inevitable. She could feel the pull of destiny tightening, forcing her toward a choice she wasn't ready to make but had no option to avoid. As the first rider appeared over the ridge, silhouetted against the morning sun, Clara squared her shoulders, gripping her weapon with a fierce determination. The fight was coming, and with it, the test of everything. She had become and everything she was willing to risk to survive. The first shots rang out like thunder, echoing across the valley. Clara ducked instinctively, feeling the heat of bullets whipping past her. Jackson's voice cut through the chaos. "Move, get to cover." She spurred her horse forward, weaving between overturned barrels and the splintered remnants of fences. Her heart pounded, but her mind sharpened, calculating, anticipating. Every instinct screamed survival. Every fiber of her being demanded she stay alive. But survival alone was no longer enough. She had to fight back, and she had to do it now. From the ridge, more riders appeared, kicking up dust like a storm. Clara saw the glint of weapons, the cold calculation in their eyes. These weren't just thieves, these were hunters, and she was the prey. She met Jackson's gaze across the street, a silent agreement passing between them. They would not go down without a fight. The first rider aimed, and Clara fired. The crack of her revolver cut through the morning air. The man fell, and the others faltered. A thrill of fear and defiance surged in her chest. This was no longer just a defense, it was a statement. She refused to be broken. She refused to be scared. A sudden movement at the edge of town made her pause. Shadows slipping between buildings, silent and deliberate. Her stomach dropped. Someone had anticipated their every move. Someone was guiding this attack. Clara's jaw clenched. It was one thing to fight strangers, another to face betrayal hidden in plain sight. Jackson tackled her as another volley of bullets tore through the street. Dust and grit filled their lungs, stinging their eyes. Clara pushed him off with a grim laugh. "We can't hide forever," she shouted over the roar. "We fight, or we die." They pressed forward, each shot, each dodge, each risked breath intensifying the tension. Clara could feel the weight of every choice pressing down on her every step, every pull of the trigger, shaping the person she was becoming. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was forging herself into something stronger, something unyielding. The riders began to retreat, disorganized and frustrated. Clara's chest heaved, her body trembling from adrenaline, fear, and rage. But she didn't feel relief. Instead, a sharper, more insidious awareness took root. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Someone had orchestrated this attack, someone with knowledge, power, and intent. And then, amidst the dust and fading echoes of gunfire. Clara realized with icy clarity, the person she needed to confront wasn't just out there in the hills. They were closer than she had ever imagined, lurking within the town she thought she could trust. Her eyes met Jackson's, silent but piercing. The war wasn't only against strangers, it was against betrayal itself, and the cost of winning would demand everything she had, including the parts of herself she had fought so hard to protect. Night fell like a curtain over the town, thick and suffocating. Clara moved through the shadows, horse hooves silent against the hard-packed earth, senses razor-sharp. The earlier attack had left the town tense and hollowed, every door shuttered, every window dark. She could feel the weight of eyes on her, unseen but undeniable, like a pulse in the air. Whoever had orchestrated the chaos was still here, waiting, watching, and she would not give them the satisfaction of fear. Jackson rode beside her, silent for the first time since the attack. His eyes scanned every alley, every doorway, every flicker of movement. "We know they've got someone feeding them information," he said finally, voice low. "But we don't know who." "Not yet." Clara's jaw tightened. That unknown was a knife pressing against her chest, relentless and unforgiving. She had fought bullets, fire, and dust storms and survived. But the thought that someone close could betray her brought a chill that even the desert wind couldn't match. "Then we find them tonight," she said, determination hardening her tone. No more waiting, no more hiding. The pair rode toward the northern ridge, where shadows pooled beneath the skeletal branches of dead trees. The wind whispered warnings through the desert, carrying the faint scent of smoke, iron, and something darker she couldn't name. Clara dismounted, pressing a hand to her horse's flank to calm it, and gestured for Jackson to do the same. The final confrontation loomed, unavoidable, and every step forward felt like walking on the edge of a blade. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man, familiar yet foreign in his confidence. He stepped into the dim moonlight, revealing the cruel smirk she had hoped never to see again. "Clara Hayes," he said, voice smooth and taunting. "You've made it this far, but how far do you think you can go?" Her heart thundered, but she squared her shoulders. "I go as far as I have to," she said, voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. Every lesson, every loss, every moment of struggle had led to this point. She would not falter. The man laughed softly, drawing a revolver from his coat. Shadows danced across his face, but Clara could see the certainty in his eyes. He was confident, dangerous, and he had the advantage of surprise. Yet, beneath the fear, beneath the pounding adrenaline, a fire ignited within her. This was the moment to confront everything she had fled, fought, and endured. This was the moment to claim her life. Clara drew her own revolver, feeling the weight of it, the cold certainty of metal in her hand. The silence thickened, stretching, taut and fragile. As predator and prey faced each other in the desert night, she exhaled slowly, and in that moment, she knew, fear could no longer control her. Only action could. The desert night seemed to hold its breath as Clara and her adversary circled each other, eyes locked, hands steady on their weapons. Every nerve screamed tension, every heartbeat thundered in her ears. The man before her, the one who had orchestrated fire, betrayal, and bloodshed, smirked as if daring her to falter. But Clara did not hesitate. She had been forged in smoke and dust, pain and loss, and nothing now could make her waver. A single shot cracked through the air, echoing off the distant cliffs. Clara ducked instinctively, returning fire. Bullets tore through the sand and splintered the nearby rocks. Jackson moved to flank the man, but Clara held up her hand. "No," she said, voice sharp. "This is mine." She advanced, step by step, letting every fear and anger fuel her movement. Memories of the burnt barn, of stolen nights of sleep, of every moment she had been tested flashed through her mind. This wasn't just revenge, it was reclaiming herself, reclaiming her life from the forces that had tried to destroy her. The man lunged, reckless now, desperation breaking through his carefully maintained composure. Clara sidestepped, her revolver steady, and fired. Pain flashed across his arm. He faltered, stumbling back. Rage twisted his features, but Clara saw the cracks forming, his control slipping. "Why?" she demanded, voice raw with emotion, trembling with both anger and relief. "Why target me? What did I ever do to you?" He sneered, but it was hollow. "It's about power," he spat. "Control. You were in the way." Clara's chest heaved. "I'm never in the way again," she said. Every word was a declaration, every syllable a weapon sharper than any bullet. With one final surge of courage, she advanced, forcing him to retreat toward the edge of the cliff. The wind whipped around them, fierce and wild, carrying dust and the scent of impending rain. He miscalculated a step too far and the earth gave beneath him. Clara watched, heart hammering, as he fell into the shadowed canyon below. Silence followed, thick and heavy, the echo of his presence fading. Jackson exhaled beside her. "It's over," he said softly. But Clara didn't answer immediately. She stood at the cliff's edge, the wind whipping her hair, eyes fixed on the horizon where the first hints of dawn glimmered. The West had tried to break her. Fire had tried. Betrayal had tried. And the lawless land itself had tried. Yet here she stood, not just surviving, but alive, unbroken, unstoppable. Her heart still carried fear, still carried grief, but it also carried determination, resilience, and the fierce knowledge that she could endure whatever came next. Clara turned away from the edge, toward the town slowly stirring in the early light. Jackson fell into step beside her, silent but steady. For the first time since the fire, she felt the weight of possibility, the sharp taste of freedom, and the undeniable truth. She had been tested, and she had emerged stronger than the West itself. And in that moment, amidst the dust, wind, and rising sun, Clara Hayes knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never be broken again.